Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Red Ribbon Dancer, and I'm sipping on some green tea today. And if you enjoy this video, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting, and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using a very limited palette today with acrylic paint. I'm using titanium white, Mars black, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, and fire red. And of course you can switch up those colors, but that's all I'll be using today. For my tools, I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 6 round synthetic brush and a number 2 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you could switch those up as well if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that you can use to help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same kind of paint and brushes and all that good stuff. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're gonna need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're painting our sky. I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors I'm using are black and white. And I'm going to have my sky coming down a little bit below the halfway point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put both black and white on my brush at the same time, about equal parts. And I'm going to visually kind of pick where that halfway point is between the top and the bottom on the left-hand side. And then I'm going to go below that, maybe about an inch or so. Make myself a little bit of a marker. Then for me, I can use my brush, but you could use any kind of utensil that you want to measure how high you went. And mine is ironically the same height as my brush. It's amazing how things like that just happen. And then I'm going to come over on the right hand side and make myself a mark at about the same height. That's going to give me a stopping point as I come down my sky. So I'm going to put more paint on my brush with the white and the black, about equal parts. I'm going to be doing my sky in a left to right type of brush stroke, and I want my sky to get lighter and lighter as it comes down my horizon. So as I come down, I'm going to be picking up more white than black, and at some point I will stop picking up black altogether and I will just pick up white. And what will happen if I don't wash my brush is my sky will get lighter and lighter naturally as it comes down towards that horizon line, because I am in essence kind of letting that black that was on my brush work its way off as it's coming down that sky. And I'm just using a nice left to right type of brush stroke to get the sky on here, and this way the colors will start to intermingle with each other, and it may end up looking like these nice soft out of focus clouds just kind of drifting by. You could do a nice subtle gradient, and that would be just kind of making your brush go fully left to right, and that'll give you more of a subtle kind of gradient. But I'm going for a little bit of a nice loose interpretive kind of sky, just like our dancer is going to be kind of an interpretive kind of dancer. So you can certainly feel free to mold this into whatever type of sky that you would like. And then once I've got the sky, and you can see I'm bringing it down to where my markers were, and it's lighter and lighter as it came down the bottom of my canvas. This dark line is just coming from my markers because they were still a little bit wet as I came down here. And then I am going to utilize this same brush for the next step but I will wash and dry it. So once you've got your sky all nice and complete, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm going to be painting my water. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using black and white paint. So I'm in essence going to kind of repeat what I did in the sky, only down here. And I'm going to have my horizon line on the darker side, but I don't want it to go almost black. I want it to just be kind of a subtle horizon line off in the distance. So you could have it a little bit lighter than the top of your sky. It depends on how dark the top of your sky is, but you definitely want it to be darker than whatever is at the bottom of your sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of black with a good amount of white on my brush. I have a little bit of black underneath there. I can always make it a little darker if I want to, but I'm going to just kind of go for a subtle type of horizon right now. So I already have my two markers, but if your two markers look to be lower than any unpainted sky, you're going to need to raise them because you want your horizon line to be completely in your sky. And I'm thinking I can certainly utilize my brush, because I know that they're the same height as my brush, and kind of just go right across, and they all look, the whole sky looks to be at that line. So I'm safe, but if you have any unpainted sky above that line, you either finish painting the sky or raise your horizon line a little bit. So now that I have these two colors on my brush, I'm going to connect my dots, the left one to the right one, using a continual line. So when I do this, I'm going to keep my eye on the prize, which is the other dot. I might, at some point stop my brush if I have to, but I just kind of go pretty quickly. I push it so I'm kind of pushing into my canvas. I'm watching my other marker. And the reason why I watch my other marker as opposed to, I need a reload, as opposed to my sky or anything like that, is because if my sky horizon line is crooked, it's going to steer my eye and my hand into being crooked as well. So if I can just kind of keep my eye on where I'm headed and not the unevenness of the paint from underneath, or that first step that I did, I will most likely have a more straight line. So it's just kind of guiding your eye and your hand in a more straight line. And if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. We've got a big island that's coming on over here and a dancer who's going to steer our attention elsewhere anyways. And then of course, if you need to or want to, you can readjust at all. I'm thinking that this is pretty good. I might have a little high spot in through here, but I'm okay with that because again, I've got lots of stuff that's going to steer the eye. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the same type of brush stroke that I did in the sky to finish my water, but I'm going to try not to mess with my horizon line too much. So I'm just going back and forth, left to right, up at the top, and then as I come down into the water, I'm going to be using more white on my brush as I come down towards the bottom of my canvas. But again, I'm just kind of using this left to right type of brush stroke so I get a little bit of movement in that water, but not so much that it looks like, a tidal wave is coming in or anything. Just making it just a nice, gentle piece of water that's going to have a little bit of movement in it. So as she's dancing across those rocks or skipping across those rocks, it'll all make a bunch of sense. And then I'm just going to bring this all the way down to the bottom. It can be really nice and light as it comes down towards the bottom of the canvas. And then we are going to be utilizing our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this, actually, let's actually use the large brush for the next step. So once you've got this on here, you can wash and dry your large brush. Just kind of tweaking and making sure it looks the way that I want. Excellent. Wash and dry your large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting our land and the shallow water in place. So I'm going to be using my large brush. I'm going to be using black, brown, and white for this step. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put my piece of land in place first with some black and brown. And then we're going to create a very large area for what I'm going to call the shallow water where the rocks are going to go. So I'm starting with about equal parts of brown and black on my brush at the same time, and just a little bit on the tip. You don't need much. I'm going to put my land in this area here. So I'm going to go about an inch above my horizon line, make myself a little bit of a marker, about an inch below my horizon line, make another marker. And then I'm coming in almost from here, almost halfway into the center of my canvas. So I'm a little maybe to the right of my center point and down about an inch. So that's going to give you a nice barrier for your land. And I'm just going to make this just almost like a hilly rock piece of land. So I'm going to just kind of make myself a little abstract kind of feel to this, where it kind of just has these little jutting out points. Maybe it kind of comes down here a little bit. Feel free to make this into whatever that you would like. And then as I do this bottom edge to it, I'm going to connect my dots, but I don't necessarily want a straight line. So I'm just going to kind of give that a little bit of movement in through there. And then I'm just going to use my brown and my black and just kind of almost dot in some texture to this piece of land. And you want it to be thick enough where you don't see your horizon line underneath. So feel free to have fun with how much paint you put in through there. It will get a little darker as it dries. So just know that, you know, if you want there to be some subtle tonal variations, that you definitely want to have a little bit more of that brown in your mixture. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my large brush. And how I'm going to do the shallow water is, in my head, the more shallow the water is, the more you're going to see the dirt from underneath. So I'm utilizing brown to represent the shallowness of the water. So I'm putting a little bit of brown paint on my brush, and I just dipped my brush in water as well. So I have a very fluid paint on my brush right now. I want shallow water all around the edge of my land, as well as I want it to come way out in through here, so it looks like it's getting closer and closer. So I'm going to give myself some markers so I know where I'm headed. So on the left hand side, I would say almost about halfway between your horizon and the bottom of your canvas, somewhere around here, you can put yourself just a little marker, just so you have a barrier as to where you want to go. And then down at the bottom of your canvas, I'm going to have mine coming, I would say, I don't know, a third of the way over from the right-hand side. Definitely I want it past my land in through here. So maybe somewhere in this vicinity is where it's going to splay out into. So again, I have watered down brown paint on my brush right now. And I don't need this to be a solid brown, but what I want is to give the illusion that this water is shallow and that we're seeing some of the dirt that is closest to the earth. And so I'm just going to utilize this to get, I'm using just a scrubbing type of technique. I'm going to put a little bit more water on my brush so I can get this to blend out a little bit further. And again, it doesn't have to be a solid color. I'm actually looking for it to be translucent with some varying tones in it. And I want it to blend into my water. So it looks like it's a gradual type of transition from that watery area into the sand that's below the water. And then I'm just going to kind of, if I wanted to add more, I could certainly add more. I might add more as I get into my, when I put my rocks on. But right now I'm going to pick up a little bit more brown with a touch of white on my brush. So this way I can have some darker spots and some lighter spots within the center kind of area of it. And the white is going to allow me to get it to look nice and soft looking. So I'm working with my wetter mixture that I had initially with the brown and the white. But now what I'm doing is I'm almost just kind of getting it to transition into the water's edge with just this little left to right type of brush stroke. And if you feel that you want to add more or you want there to be more information throughout it, feel free to continue to add. I think I'm going to add a little bit more whiteness over on the edges here. This is just giving you almost that little white cap kind of look, as if the water is kind of breaking into where the rocks are going to be. So you can certainly have fun with the intensity of that. I think I want a little bit more. Didn't bring it quite out as far as I wanted that brown, so I'm just kind of splaying that out a little bit more, and you just continue to have fun. That center area can be pretty darn dark because that's where the rocks are going to be displayed in a little bit. And then once you've got this whole area as dirty as you want it, and it's transitioning into your water nice and naturally, we're going to utilize our medium brush for the next step. So you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer to our tree trunk and our branches. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using black and brown paint. I'm not going to wash my brush throughout this process, and I'm just going to alternate the colors so I have some varying tones and shades of the black and the brown. We'll add highlights and more dimension later, or bark, but right now we're just going to kind of get it in shape. So I'm loading my brush with black and brown. I want this tree to really look like it is wise, and it's been here a while, so I'm going to have a really pretty wide trunk to it. So I'm going to have mine kind of sitting about in the middle of my island, somewhere in through here. So I'm just kind of making myself a couple of little markers. And then for me, all trees seem to be wider at the bottom, and then they get more narrow as they go up. And then all the branches seem to get more narrow as they go towards the tips of the branches. So I'm going to put in place my trunk and a couple of main heavy branches, and then I'll put a whole bunch of little branches on here. As I do this, I am going to be using a very, I would say, loose grip on my brush, as well as a lot of paint on my brush. So this way it ends up giving me a nice fluid motion to my paint, as well as to the branches on the tree. So it will look nice and natural. You can split the tree wherever you want to. This is an imaginary tree that doesn't have any main, style that I'm going for, or a specific type of tree. So please feel free to make your tree into whatever you want it to be. I'm going to have, like I said, a couple of main branches that are going to make the tree nice and stable, but then after that I will be doing a bunch of smaller branches, and then I will make this into whatever I want. I want mine to have some good balance to it, so I'm going to have it pretty heavily weighted up here and maybe over here. I'm going to have some branches coming off the sides as well, but again, you can really make yours into whatever style tree that you would like to. Don't be terribly concerned about the tips of the branches in through here, because you're going to be covering those with a bunch of leaves and stuff, so you don't have to worry about those being perfect. But I do like to have my branches kind of splaying out and looking pretty darn natural, so I will from time to time just kind of add a rogue branch here and there, maybe one that even looks as if it's broken every now and again. So just feel free to have fun with this and make it into whatever style tree that you want. But once you've got, I feel like I've got some pretty good solid branches in through here that would hold up my tree in a nice stable way. So once I've got that, now I can just kind of start really freestyling and giving myself a bunch of little tiny branches coming all in throughout the middle and kind of weaving their way in and out of the tree itself. I think maybe this one, I want this one to come out a little bit more. And again, if you were to look closely at mine, you'd see that my branches are not perfectly executed. They've got some spots that are not painted all the way through. And to me, that's okay because I'm going to be adding these beautiful leaves all throughout the tree, and we'll be adding some nice bark and stuff like that in the coming steps. So I'm really okay with imperfect branches at this point. So you can utilize or determine how far you want to take yours. But I'm thinking this is pretty good for me. I will be extending my tree into the land when I put my details on it, so I can, I'm not concerned about that portion either at this point. And then we're going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful structure for your tree on here, you can wash and dry your medium brush. And, well, I just want to keep adding branches now and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting our stepping stones in place. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to first mentally decide where I want the rocks to go and why I want them to go there. So for me, I want my dancer to look like she's just really enjoying maybe the rhythm of the sounds of nature, and she's just flitting herself off to this island with this beautiful red tree. So I want there to be a lot of dimension here, so I'm going to have a large rock in through the bottom of my canvas in through here, and then I want there to be kind of like a landing area at the island. So I'm going to have my smallest ones, I would say somewhere about here, because I want it to almost look like there's little stairs going up that island. So for me, it makes it very easy for me to have a starting point and a stopping point. So I'm going to put my smallest rock in place that's going to be visible in the water, and then my largest rock in place, and then I will progressively make them smaller and larger. So I'm going to, for the most part, I'll be using brown and black, similarly to how I did the tree and the island area in through here. But I will also be using a little bit of white to make like a grayish color when I get to my rocks that are going to be on the land, because I want to be able to see them and identify them for future painting purposes. So I'm going to start with black and brown on my brush at the same time. I'm going to decide where my biggest rock is going to be. So my biggest rock at the bottom is going to be almost halfway as large as the bottom of my canvas. So if this is about the halfway mark, I'm a little, maybe 1.5 inches to 2 inches to the left of that. So somewhere in this vicinity is where the bottom of that is. And I'm about 1 inch up this left-hand side. And I'm just going to give myself a really carefree shape to the top of the rock. I don't need it anything perfect. This is just meant to look like a rock, so it doesn't have to be of a perfect shape. I like them to have some dimensional elements to them, so that's why I'm using the black and the brown. So it's going to end up having some light spots and some dark spots naturally without me even thinking too hard about it, and I'm just wiggling my brush throughout that area to give me to color it in. Now I'm going to go do my smallest one, which is going to be up near my my land edge. So if I want this to look like it's going up kind of a hill, I'm going to have my bottom rock that's going to be in the water to the left of my tree. So I'm going to the left of my tree. I'm going to go somewhere in this vicinity and just give myself a little kind of dark mark that's going to represent that smallest rock that I have back there. And then I'm going to progressively make other rocks that are going to, the smallest one's going to be there, and my larger ones are going to be in through here. So I can really just start from anywhere. You can have rocks that sit in front of other rocks. You can have them of all kinds of shapes. I'm going to leave little inlet spots where maybe the water will come in through here. I'm not going for anything perfect right now. I just am looking to space my rocks so I have a place to build from when I go to add the little platform areas on top of the rocks. If you feel that you might get confused with what rock is what, then what I recommend is maybe one rock you do with just brown paint, and then maybe the next rock you use a little bit more black paint in your mixture. So that way you can have these different tones and stuff that will help you to work your way through the building process of the rocks. You could even use a little bit of white at this point. My end goal is over here, so I'm just kind of watching where that's going to end up. So I know that I have a goal in mind, a place where I'm shooting for. And again, you can have your rocks in whatever shape that you want. I'm just right now utilizing my black and brown. I think I want to have one maybe up in through here. And again, they can really be whatever shape that you want them to. Maybe I have a little cluster of them in through here. Maybe I have a little boulder of sorts kind of on its own sitting over here in the water. Maybe there's another little one in through here. So really you can see I am progressively getting smaller as I go, but I'm okay with some of them sitting in front of each other. I just know that that's where that's where I'm headed. I'm headed to that one little spot off in the distance that's going to provide my dancer with a place to land when she gets to that beautiful little secluded magical island out there. So maybe I've got one in through here. So if she's skipping along these ones, she's going to have to skip over here, and then maybe she'll have to skip over onto this one, and then she can meet that one in through there. I think that's as many as I'm going to do. Maybe just one out here strayed out by itself. And then I'm going to do a couple little ones in the land. So I'm using my black and brown, but I've added a little bit of white on my brush as well. So I have all three colors on my brush. And I'm just going to kind of give myself these little markers where I want the stepping stones to go up the hill into this little magical place here, but you don't necessarily need them too light. I think I'm more or less doing them a little bit lighter so you guys can see them. And then we are going to be utilizing our large brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your small brush or your medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer to the leaves on our tree. So I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors I'm using are black and red. And how I'm going to do this is as I'm creating where I want these leaves to go, in my head I'm thinking these are just the shadowy kind of leaves. So these are going to be the darkest ones that are underneath. So I do not need to cover my entire tree 100%. I'm going to be leaving some little peekaboo spots so you can see the branches or some of the branches. So I'm going to load my brush with red and a little bit of black. Not much. The black can really easily take over the whole thing, but this is going to give you those shadowy type areas within the tree. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of utilize the tip of my brush to give myself these areas of leaves that I want throughout the tree. You don't just have to go at the tip of the branches. You can go within the tree itself, within the interior of the tree. This is going to give you a lot of dimension throughout the tree. So I just reloaded my brush with mostly red and a teeny bit of black paint, and then I'm going to go ahead and give myself as many areas of leaves that I want. And again, I'm leaving some little peekaboo spots so you can see the branches underneath. I don't want to cover up all of the branches because it adds, for me, it adds that, again, more of a dimensional element. You can always add branches back onto it later if you feel that you might have covered up too much or you want to add that extra bit of information into it. You can certainly do that later as well. And then as I get over towards the tips or the edges of my leaves, this is where I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. I'm really just using the dry, almost dry edges of it to give these light little speckly marks along the exterior edges of the tree. That's going to make it look a little bit more in focus and have more information within it if you can have those soft edges to it. And then also when you're doing this, if you try to give it a little bit of a not so perfect look. So if this was a perfect circle, it might look like the landscaper just came in and trimmed the whole thing. So if you can give it these areas that pop out a little bit more, that'll give it that more natural kind of look to it that Mother Nature has a tendency to do as opposed to the landscaper. And then once you've got it all on here, you can see I've left a good amount of branches showing through. Once you've got this, we are going to be utilizing our medium brush for the next step. So you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing our rocks and the land area. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and the colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm never going to have a ton of paint on my brush, and my whole thought process is I want to have highlights and shadows and maybe a little bit more information. So my rocks are already pretty darn dark, so is my land right now, so that darkness can act as the shadowy areas, and then the lightness is going to come from the surface on top. So for me, I want these to act as stepping stones, which means somebody should be able to step on them. So they're going to have some sort of flat-ish top to them. So that's where my highlight is going to go. It's going to go on the top side, like a little platform area on the stones that I feel that I want to be stepped on. So I'm going to be utilizing, to start, I'm going to just have a little bit of white and brown on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to say what part of the stone do I want to be stepped on. And for me, I'm going to have this one is going to have its stepping area in through here. So I'm just giving myself kind of a flat type of spot, and then I need it to blend in with the rest of the rock. So I picked up a little bit of brown, and then I'm just going to almost blend it into the surrounding area. And for me, the messier or the more I just kind of wiggle my brush with a clear thought of, you know, this is going to be my brightest area, that's when I get the most natural looking rocks. So if I want a little light area over here, I can just kind of put a little light area over here, wipe my brush off on my paper towel, maybe pick up a bit of brown and get it to blend in with the rest of the rock. So because I brought a light spot down in through here, that made this area look as if it's on the other side, as if it's catching the shadow, and this is catching the light from above. So I'm going to progress through my rocks in that specific kind of manner. I think I want a little more highlight on this one in through here, and you can just keep building the light spots as you feel is appropriate. So on this one, again, I'm going white and brown, and I think I want my landing area to be somewhere in through here, and it doesn't just have to be one solid circular or oval type of spot. This one can have, you know, maybe a bigger surface that I'm going to create into this area where somebody could step on it. And then once I've got that, then I can kind of just merge those bright areas into the rest of the rock. So I picked up a little bit of brown, and I'm just kind of maneuvering my brush around to get this to look like it all belongs together. And that to me is looking pretty darn good. You can leave a little dark spot on the edge of the rock if you wanted to, or you know, depending on how bright you want it to look out in the daylight area, but you can just feel free to utilize any kind of light and shadow pattern on rocks because they have so many divots and undulations and all different kinds of information. So you don't really have to follow all the shadows need to be on the left or all the highlights need to be on the right. You can really have fun with it because there's so many variables involved. So again, I'm just putting brown and white on my brush to get the flat spot on this particular rock to appear. So just getting a little bit there. And I think I'm going to have a little, this thing in here, I think this is going to become a little rock in itself. So I just put another little rock in front of that one. And then I'm wiping my brush off of my paper towel, getting this bright spot to blend, or bright spots to blend in with the rest of the rock. Maybe get a little bit of lightness over there. And then again, you just kind of keep fiddling with it, adding little additional highlights if you want that area to be a bit brighter. I think this one in through here is going to be where my dancer is going to be landed. So I'm going to put, of course, brown and white on my brush. I think I want this flat spot or platform area to be a little bit on the larger side, so she has enough room to maneuver her dancing feet on. So just making sure that that's got enough space for her to fit. I just picked up a little bit more brown just to get this to blend in over here. Wipe my brush off on my paper towel and then get this side over here to just kind of blend in. And again, it's a rock, so maybe you want to add blue or silver or orange or a different kind of color to the rock. They don't have to be just this monochromatic kind of look that I'm going for. You can certainly get yours to be in whatever color you want. There's so many different kinds of rocks out there, so don't feel as if you have to do yours exactly as mine. And then this one, I think I'm going to have a nice flat spot in through here. She might have to jump pretty far to get to this one. I think as they get smaller, you might find I'm going to do a couple at a time because I've got the lightness on my brush in through here. These little ones that I've got off in the water over here where she might not land or might not want to land, I'm just going to kind of put little light spots on them. And then I've got my light spots. Now I wiped my brush off on my paper towel, picked up a little bit of brown and am rubbing that in so that makes sense. And if you need to add a little bit of darkness, like I feel like these might need a little bit more of I don't know, information, so I just added a bit of black onto my brush to get them to have maybe more little crevices and dips within them. We'll do a little bit of the water around the edges in a minute, but right now I'm just kind of getting the rocks to appear and pop out. And again, because I'm using just this monochromatic palette, it's a great lesson on value, on how to make your how to create the lightness and the darkness so you can see the variations and the form of a particular object. So you can really learn a lot by just utilizing a simple color palette, because it takes quite a bit to get something to look three-dimensional or to get it to have enough form or dimension or shape on it with just a limited palette like this. So it's a great tool to use as you're learning. If you ever want to really get into having your paintings have a lot of form and shape to them and dimension, practicing with this limited palette really gets you started in that way. So I'm just kind of tweaking these as I go. I might add a little bit more to them as I'm doing the water, but I'm going up into my land now. So I've got these little platform kind of stepping rocks going up into my land. So I want these to really kind of look like stairs. So I'm concentrating more on getting that highlight at the tippy top of them. And if I needed to, I could add some extra dimension along the edges. But I want to put some stuff in my land too. So I'm not going to do too much. I'm really just going to add maybe some wild little pieces of grass coming up the edges. I'm utilizing black, brown, and white. And I'm just going to kind of alter these colors. So if I want to have some little pieces of wild grass coming up and appearing. Oops, that is a big one. We're going to go way up on that one. Maybe that one's going to be a little flower or something. I'm just kind of maneuvering my brush to give myself some bits of information. So you could utilize your smaller brush too if you felt that you wanted there to be a bit more I don't know, texture and stuff like that, or maybe you wanted to see every little individual rock on its own, you could certainly utilize a smaller brush to accomplish that type of look, but that's going to be your judgment call. I want there to look like there's a little bit of wild grass or something on the edge there. I'm going to put a touch of white and brown on my brush here to give a little bit of a highlight of sorts on this piece of land over in through here. And again, because I'm just doing this freestyle type of painting, you don't need it to look as any specific way. Right now I'm thinking, ooh, I want texture, maybe some little pebbles or some little grass or something around the edge. So I'm just adding little marks. Mark making is something that can easily give the viewer some information on a seemingly simple painting that might not have everything spelled out for you. So right now I'm just giving the implication or insinuation that we've got some wild stuff along the edges, we've got some wild stuff along here, maybe I've got some little shadows underneath this little patch of foliage or whatever this little grassy stuff is in through here. Maybe I've got some little bits of waves. I just picked up a little bit of white paint. Maybe I've got some little waves or something along the shore edge, something like this. And then I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to add information for our tree in a little bit, but I'm going to do the same thought process that I just did with that land. I'm going to do it as my water ripples around my rocks. So again, brown, black, and white are going to be my colors. If I want there to be a little bit, I need a little bit more paint in through there so you can see it. If I want there to look like there's a little ripple of sorts, I'm going to just kind of utilize my my brush to give you these insinuations of little ripples coming out on this right hand side. Maybe I've got some shadowy areas in between the rocks. So I'm not doing much right now. Right now I just have some black and brown on my brush, probably, oh, and a little white from when I was doing that area over there, because I don't wash my brush very often. I just added a bit of water onto my brush. This is going to help me get these almost more subtle type of marks throughout the water. And what I'm really going for right now is to make these rocks not look like they're just stuck in the water. I want there to look like there's movement from the water right around them. So I'm, in essence, adding these wiggle marks that are going to insinuate movement. And then I think I'm covering over this rock maybe this is a rock underneath the water. And then if I want to, I can add a little bit of white that will give you more movement throughout that water. You can add your darker colors to add shadow underneath the water right next to them. So you can really just think of, what do you want to do? Do you want to add a shadow in that water? Then add a little bit of darkness to it. If you want to add a ripple of sorts, then you can add movement. If you want to add a wave, I just wash my brush and put some white on my brush. Maybe I want the water coming from here, and maybe it's got a little spray up of water coming in through there. Maybe I've got some water coming up over from in through here. So you can really have fun with what's happening in that water. You can have maybe the tide is coming in between these rocks in through here. So maybe I bring some extra white in through there to give the viewer the information that there's some water with more movement that's coming right between these rocks in through here. So you don't have to follow what I'm doing. You can really look at the pattern of your rocks. Maybe some water's making its way through these rocks in through here. Maybe I've got more movement in the water over in through here. So I'm just adding a little bit of lightness to tell the viewer that there's more movement coming in from that water over in through here. Maybe I want some water crashing up over on the edge of this island in through here. So I've got some splashes up in through here. So really have fun with it. Just as you're making a mark, what is that mark meant to represent, and emulate that. If you want a splash, put a splash. If you want a highlight from the top of the rock, put the highlight at the top of the rock and try and make it look flat. So that way it will tell the viewer that somebody can stand on this thing, and make it shadowed down on the side. And then you just kind of keep tweaking it as it's drying. You might find that you want to add a little bit more information to it, and you just kind of keep adding to that visual story. And then we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your rocks and your land all nice and completed, and like somewhere like this, I've lost the edge of this rock because it's the same tonal value as the sand behind it. So I'm adding a bit more white to this rock because I've lost the edge of it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I definitely want the viewer to see that. So I'm just making sure that my tonal value is correct so people can see the edges of that object that I want them to. Or maybe you need to make it a little bit more brown or a little bit more white. So whatever you, or darker, so somebody can see the edge and see the information that you're looking to tell them. And then just kind of keep tweaking it as much as you want to. And then we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing our tree trunk. I'm going to be using my small brush, and the colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. And what I'm really going to do here is I'm going to be adding some texture or the appearance of maybe some bark on the tree trunk. And then if I have little pieces of my tree branches throughout that I feel would benefit from a little extra pop, I'll add a little bit of highlight and stuff to them too. So I'm going to start with some brown and just a little bit of white on my brush at the same time, so I can identify where I want some of my branches and stuff to go. So I think I'm going to have this one coming in through here, and this is where you get to take how you started this tree and really give it some life. So I just took what was seemingly one big solid trunk, and I just now have split it by putting a little bit of a highlight to connect to this branch in through here, which is a fun thing to do because you can bring that tree into have so much more life. So I'm going to do the same thing, I think, with this branch in through here. So I have this branch coming off like this, and I can just kind of bring it down in through here and just get that branch to almost, that split to just kind of fade in or meet up with this one, whatever works visually for you. And then I think I'm going to do that again with, we're going to say this branch in through here. So I've got this top trunk area is almost split into like 4 different pieces. And if you bump into some of your leaves along the way, don't worry about it because you're going to be able to get those to blend in when we're doing the rest of the tree. And then maybe just a little bit of brown on this one over in through here. So again, you can really have fun with your tree. I'm going to get this branch over here to pop out as well. So brown and white, and this one I think I'm going to get this one to, I don't know, meet in through here somewhere. Oh yeah, so now it looks like, I don't know, it might morph into something else, but as I'm doing this, I'm like, oh, that looks cool like that, and that looks cool like that. I like getting my branches to just naturally look like they're morphing into one another, and which again gives that tree so much more dimension. So I'm going to kick out the bottom of this tree with the roots that are making their way into the ground. And again, right now I'm just using mostly brown with a touch of white paint on my brush to get all of this almost like a roadmap of where I want the light spots and the dark spots to be created within the branches of the tree. Yeah, this one looks like it's twisting around the back there. Excellent. And I'm really primarily focused on the branches that are at the bottom of the tree. You could certainly be more interested in the ones in the top, but at this point, I'm not terribly interested in the ones at the top. The only ones that I am interested in are if I feel I'm gonna still have a little peekaboo spot coming through, then maybe I just add a little highlight here and there, like maybe in through here, but I don't even think I need that. So I'm just looking to get my branches to kind of stick out, or these trunk parts to stick out and look like they've got a little bit of realness to them. I just added a bit more white to my brush so I can get this main section in the trunk to just look like it's got much more texture. I've already separated the areas of the tree that I want to, so this is just really adding that extra bit of texture to it. So it's just a tiny bit of white, and if you need a little bit of brown or feel like you want a little bit of brown, feel free to add that as well. And again, this is just giving you all of those lumps and bumps that are on the tree, making it look really nice and natural. And if you feel like you went too dark or you put too much information in, you can certainly back it off with a bit of black paint. Just utilize that black paint to guide you into whatever lightness or darkness that you want throughout the tree. And then we are going to be using this small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of the information in your tree trunk that you want, you can wash and dry. Just add in a little bit more information here. Wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our dancer. I'm gonna be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pre-mix myself a medium to dark gray color. So how I'm gonna do this is I'm just gonna take a little bit of my black. I don't need much because she's just a tiny dancer, so we don't need much at all. I'm using black, brown, and just a touch of white paint, and I'm getting myself a dark, maybe a little bit lighter than that. Somewhere in this vicinity is where I'm going. I don't want it to be just black because we're going to be putting her dress on later, so I definitely want it to be a little bit lighter than that because her dress is going to be made of black. And I do know that this gray will get a little bit darker as it dries. So this is about the color that I'm going for in through here. And then what we're going to do is we're in essence going to make a stick figure, and then we will form it into a real person. So I'm going to give you a couple of markers where I'm putting mine. So I have my girl is going to be right about here, so I need her to land on one of the stones, so I'm picking this one to have her landing on. So your stone formation may not be exactly where mine is, so you could certainly modify the location of your dancer to suit your rock formation. So I'm going to make a couple of markers. The first one is going to be right on the horizon line. If this is where my foot is going to go, I'm going a little tiny bit to the right of that and straight up. And I'm going to make myself a marker right at the horizon line. So something like that. I can make myself my marker for my toe, which is going to be on my rock a little bit to the left of where that marker is on the horizon line. Then I want to make myself another marker, which is going to represent the hand or the tip of one of her hands. So I'm going to the left of here, maybe about 2.5 to 3 inches and down just a tiny bit below my horizon line. Somewhere right about here. Then I'm going to look at these two markers. I'm going to come almost halfway between them, maybe a little bit closer to the top one. So if you were to draw an imaginary line between these two, come about halfway, go up just a little bit, and actually it is about halfway, so right about halfway, and then you're going to come over to the left about a half of an inch to an inch. So this marker here is a little bit to the right of this one and down about halfway between here and here. So somewhere about there. The next marker is right here. So if you come over to the right from here about 3/4 of an inch, you're going to go up into the sky, maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. Make yourself a little bit marker. Then you're going to go straight up from that, maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and a tiny bit to the right. So right now you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots. Now we're just going to connect the dots. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to connect this one to here with a straight diagonal line. It doesn't have to be super duper straight, but something that will just get these two connected in through here. And if you want to, you can water down your paint a little bit. That's going to give you a more fluid paint stroke. So you can just add a tiny bit of water into your paint if you want to. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this one to here with an arcing type of a line. So this is going to represent the tip of her head, and it's going to arc into what's going to be her waist. The mark at the horizon line represents her waist, something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to make myself this is going to be one of her legs in through here. So about halfway up from here to here, right about, well, actually it's got to be a little bit higher than here. This is going to be her toe. So I want her knee of sorts to be somewhere about, maybe a little bit higher than that, maybe right about there. So a little bit higher than that. This is going to be her knee. I'm just going to connect here to here. And then this is going to connect to here. So we are making ourselves a fun little stick figure right now. Then what I'm going to do is I am going to be drawing myself a little bit of a horizontal type of line that's going to represent the shoulders. So this is going to be maybe about 1.5 inch down from this head. And it's only going to be, I would say, maybe about 1 inch or so wide, inch and a half wide, something like that. And then I'm going to connect here to here. This is her fingertips. This is, in essence, kind of her shoulder type of area. So this is going to be a vertical line like that, and then a little diagonal line like this. And these don't have to be perfect, but this will get you somewhere in the right ballpark. And then this one I'm just going to connect to this corner in through here. This is going to be her fingertips over here. So now that we've got ourselves a pretty stick figure, let's make this into a dancer. So how I'm going to do this first is I'm going to tackle this front leg in through here. So I'm going to give her a rear end, a thigh, a calf, and a foot. So her rear end is going to be in this vicinity in through here. It's going to look pretty large when I start because we don't have the thickness of her waist on yet. But once we put that on there, it'll look better, trust me. So I'm giving her a rear end, something like this. I'm bringing it down, I would say, to about here. This is where I'm going to say her thigh starts, the back of her thigh, something like this. This is going to travel down a little bit past where I have this knee here, so it's going to travel down just a little bit further. Then I need to put her calf muscle on, and she's got a pretty big calf muscle because she's a dancer and she works out a lot. So I'm putting her calf muscle, oops, that's going to be even bigger than I thought, like that, bringing it down. And then she's going to have a little bit of a foot somewhere down at the bottom, so I'm going to just bump it out a little bit at the back, give her her toe in through here. And then the front part of her leg, I'm going to come over to the right from this marker, I would say about 1/2 of an inch, somewhere in through here. And this is going to be a pretty good progression to where it comes down to the knee. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but we will have a skirt on top of it to make sure that if it doesn't go right, we've got something to disguise it. Then we've got a little knee in this vicinity, so we've got just a little bump for the knee. And then this can come pretty close to the line coming down in through here. And if you felt that you wanted to bump it out at all for that shin, you can certainly do that. and something like that. And then you're just going to color it in. So your dancer may end up more muscular than mine. It might end up more slender than mine. You can certainly bend it into whatever style or shape that you want your dancer to be in. I am going to, well, her butt just grew a little bit there, that's all right. I am going to be widening her back a little bit too in a minute, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tackle this leg in through here. So this leg is going to, imagine it coming from in through here. So again, you're probably not going to see the bottom of the rear end at all, simply because we're going to be adding the skirt and all that, but I need a thigh in through here. So I'm giving a thigh down to the knee. This is going to be a thigh, and then her knee is somewhere in through here, and then her calf is going to be back in through here. And we're seeing this from a strange angle, so it doesn't have to, again, be anything perfect. And she's going to have her little foot is going to be in here, I would say right about here. So she's got a little foot in through that. And of course you can modify the shape of yours all you want. If you want to add a little knee, but again, we're seeing it at an interesting angle here. We might be seeing it a little bit sideways. So I am going to put her head on next, so that way I can kind of proportion things with her head. So I'm just going to put a little oval type of shape in through here. I'm not going to bring it all the way down to this cross mark, because that's going to be, I need to put a little neck on her as well. So I've got her head, and what I do for her head is I'm going to bump out a little cute nose about halfway in through here. She needs a little chin somewhere about there. I give her a little bit of a forehead, something like that. And then I give her a bun on the top of the back part of her head, somewhere in through here. Of course, your dancer can have whatever style of hair that you would like, and you can just kind of keep adjusting this until you feel that it works. I'm going to give her a little bit of a neck. So her neck is going to come into her shoulders, something like this, something like this. We're going to give her better shoulders in a minute too, but this is just getting it started. And then what I'm going to do is I want to give her her back. So I'm going to come down in through here a little bit and just curve this like this. This is going to take it into her shoulder in through here. We've got that, and of course if you needed to give her a little bit more of a shoulder, you could certainly do that. And then on the front side, I'm going to take this, I'm going to say is her waist, and I'm going to connect it to her shoulder. So something like this. And of course you can give your dancer whatever shape body that you would like. It is totally up to you how you want to shape this. We're going to give it more dimension in a little bit when we put the clothing on, and we're going to put some skin on and stuff too. But right now we're just building her. This is going to be her fingers in through here, so I want to make sure that when I'm building this arm, I have it a little bit wider here where the shoulder is, then maybe a little bicep in through here. Here's about her elbow, and then maybe a little forearm in through here. And then her hand is going to be well hidden with the ribbon, so I'm just going to kind of give her a little thumb and then a little fingers in through there. And of course you can modify that all you want. Make sure that you got that little muscle coming out back here, okay? And then we've got the other arm in through here. So this is going to be her elbow, which is easy to identify on this one. She's got her bicep in through here, and she's got her shoulder that meets her neck in through there. I've got this area in through here that meets the underside of her arm, like that. And then I've got her forearm. This is going to be the tip of her fingers, so I want to bring her wrist somewhere before that area. Just bring this, oh, whoops, that was a little bit too wide. Bring this a little bit like this. That works. And if I need to add a little bit of an elbow, might have to do a little work on that arm in a second. And then for here, I'm just going to give her a tiny little, I think my brush is not cooperating with me, we'll blame it on the brush. That's the best thing to blame your painting if it doesn't come out the way that you want. It's all the brush's fault. I'm gonna give her a little fingertip in through here, a little tiny thumb in through there, and then just kind of get it to make its way into the forearm. And then we are going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got your arm the way that you want, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're painting the first layer of our ribbon. I'm using my small brush and I'm using just red paint. So I'm going to be using quite a bit of paint. I want this to look like it's a nice fluid motion. So my brush will move pretty fast, and it's not gonna be great coverage the first time I do it, but at least it'll get me into my motion that I want. So I definitely want this to be coming off of her hand or her arm. So I'm gonna have it kind of wrapped around her arm like this, and maybe, I don't know, coming in through here like this. So I'm hiding some of her hand. And then I really just want it to kind of flow up into the air. So I'm gonna maybe go something like this and like this. And again, I'm okay with it not being perfect. When I do it on this first go around, I'd rather just have my line look really nice and fluid, like it's not stopping, because the ribbon wouldn't stop. So I'm just gonna kind of keep going with my line as I'm building it. And then I think I'm gonna have a curve in through here, and it's gonna come out like that. And then what I would do is I'm gonna just go back with the red paint and clean up my line. So I'm gonna have my ribbon, I'm gonna try and have my ribbon look bigger as it gets closer to the viewer, which would be over here on the left-hand side. So I'm gonna try and get this line to be a bit wider than it is as it meets her in through here. But again, I'm just using red paint to get this started. We'll be adding the bits of highlights and shadows to the ribbon in a little while to make it look more realistic. But right now I just want to get a good coat of the red paint on here. I know that my red paint is translucent, so as it crosses over areas like my horizon line, I will probably see that the horizon line underneath the paint, which I'm totally okay with because I know that I've got other steps to go on this ribbon, so it will help me to, it won't matter by the time I'm done, because I've got all the other highlights and shadows to go on this. And you could certainly do another color ribbon. You could have a purple ribbon, or you could have multiple ribbons. That might look pretty cool if you have, you know, one coming out of one side of one of her arms and then another coming out of her other arm. So just have fun with this. Get it to be in whatever beautiful display that you would like. Maybe you're going to have more than one dancer, and maybe each dancer is going to have its own color ribbon. So just enjoy this process. And sorry that my hand's getting in the way. I'm trying not to let it get in the way, but as I'm doing these lines and I want them to look nice and fluid, I tend to have my hand in the correct position for that to happen. So it tends to get in the way in the way for you guys. And then once we are done with this step, we are going to go back, or actually we're going to use this same small brush for the next step. So you can get your ribbon, the first layer of your ribbon on here. Then you're going to wash and dry this small brush as I'm just finishing up here, taking my time, making sure I've got it in the full color that I want, and just kind of just following that original path that I had created. Some of it's going to be skinnier. I'm trying to get my line a little bit skinnier as it's going towards her, but if I don't accomplish that effect, I'm okay with that. That's just part of the game here. If you can get all of the visual elements in there, awesome, but if not, just enjoy the process. That's the most important goal for me, is to enjoy the process of the painting itself. So if I don't accomplish all of the elements perfectly, I'm totally cool with that. And then I'm going to be utilizing, like I said, this same brush for the next step. So I will wash it and dry it and just get ready. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're finishing our dancer. So I'm using my small brush, and the colors I'm using are brown, black, and white. And how I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna do some highlights on her skin first, and then we'll put on her dress and her shoes, and we'll call it a day. So I'm gonna go for my light gray, or my gray color, plus a little bit of brown and white for my lighter areas of skin tone. So somewhere in this vicinity, you can really have whatever color you want. It's gonna get a little bit darker when it's on her. But what I'm really looking to do is just kind of highlight certain aspects of her body. So I've got a little lightness where it's going to be on her rear end, and this is going to be hidden underneath her clothes. So again, you don't have to do it perfect, and this is just giving the viewer the information of the contours or the shape of her body. So this right now is just a little bit of that lighter color. I'm not going all the way to the right. I'm just adding these bits of highlights, maybe on her calf, on her thigh, on the left-hand side, on her face. I'm going to add a little bit. This maybe in her hair too, so just a little bit on her nose and on her cheeks, maybe a little in her hair. I'm going to add a touch more white to it in a second, so you'll be able to see it better, but right now I'm just kind of adding a mid-tone onto it. So I'm just going for the top side of these particular areas. Now I'm going to add a tiny bit of white on my brush to give me some extra bits of highlights, such as on the calf muscle. I know that that's going to be popping out a little bit more than the rest. Her feet are going to be covered by shoes in a minute. Maybe a little extra lightness on her bum in through here. Maybe that's catching a little bit more light than the rest. I'm going to put a little bit of white on the tip of her nose, just to give you a sense of form, maybe a little bit on her chin, maybe a little bit on her forehead. So I'm not going for much detail here. I'm really just going for giving the implication of form and shape. I'm going to put a little bit on these arms. This is the lighter color with a little bit of white in it. And then I'm going to start to add the clothing on. So again, we're just giving the insinuation of clothing. It doesn't need to be anything perfect. I'm going to do some shoes first. So I just washed my brush and I'm putting a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. I'm going to have her wearing like ballerina type slippers. So I'm going to do some little just ties down her ankle, and then I'm just going to color in a little black area on her foot. I think I have a little pencil mark here that I want to erase. Maybe that needs to get erased by paint. So something like this. And once I've got that on there, and of course you can resize the foot if you needed to, then I'm going to put a little shoe on the other foot. So again, just a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. I'm giving a little bit of a tie around her ankle, as if she's wearing some sort of shoe that ties around her ankle. Then I'm putting a little black area for the shoe on her foot. This is gonna, we're really seeing the bottom of this foot in through here. You could then put a tiny bit of white or a lighter color just to give you a little bit of form at the where that heel is. If you want to add a tiny spot of lightness at the heel or at the bottom of the foot, you can certainly have fun with playing with that a bit, just to give again a little bit more information, or even in those the ties that you have. And then I think I need to get this little white area over here because it's driving me crazy. So I have this little area of the rock that was dark behind the foot. So we're gonna lighten that up so you can see the foot. I do need to put a little tiny shadow on this rock. So I'm just gonna use a bit of brown and black to put a shadow of my dancer right coming off of where the foot is. and then maybe kind of just cascading down the back of that rock, something like this. Not much, just something again to, you know, give some authenticity to the painting, and that there is a light source coming from somewhere. Now I'm going to be using black paint, but it's going to be watered down black paint to put her skirt in place. So I just took some black and I'm adding water to it because I want my skirt to be see-through, but I want it to be black. So you'll be able to see it on top of her body. So I'm going to start right along her waist, and I'm going to put my black paint in along her waist. And then if your body is still too wet at this point, then maybe you wait a minute, but I'm going to just kind of go for this in front of here. I'm going to have her skirt just kind of cascading down in front, maybe even past her knee. You can certainly decide how far down you want it to go. I'm going to have it kind of coming, I would say maybe somewhere around here, giving myself a little ripply edge. Then it's going to travel along the backside of her rear end, and then just kind of let gravity take over and maybe look like it's coming out a bit in through there. And then I'm using my watered down black paint on my brush to get the movement of this translucent or see-through type of fabric that I'm going for here. So this is going to give you the illusion that whatever she's wearing is just maybe this black see-through type of cloth. So you can really have fun with getting that to appear to be on the see-through side, but definitely having, you know, streaks of black going through it are going to give you the implication or the information that it is in fact black, and then getting those edges to happen, but you want to be able to see her skin underneath. So that's where the lightness of her skin comes in. And then as far as the clothing coming up her torso, you could really do as much detail or as little detail as you want on this. I'm going to do very little detail. I'm just going to kind of get it to almost disappear into her skin, which could give the implication that she's wearing a full bodysuit, or that, you know, whatever you want it to appear to be is totally fine. If you want it to be a little bit lighter on the chest, just add a touch of the gray. You can really get that to be as dramatic or as subtle as you want it to be. You could have like a tank top type of dress where it just comes over, you know, her shoulders, or you could just do it as I'm doing, which is just leaving it almost as if it's, we can't really tell what it is, and that would work out just fine. And then I'm going to put a tiny bit of black on the bottom side of her head and the back side of her neck to, again, just make sure that I have enough shadows or information that lead the viewer to understand that there is some dimension on here. And then wherever else you felt that you needed to add or subtract any information, feel free to do so. And then we are going to be using our large brush for the next step, so you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing our tree. I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be using red and white paint. And how I'm going to do this is I just want to get it progressively lighter as it comes out towards the edges of, or the outside of the tree. So I'm going to start with just red paint on my brush, and I'm in essence kind of dotting in a similar pattern to what I did on the first go around, because I know that my red paint is translucent, which means you can see through it. So you're going to be able to see a lot of those dark spots right through the paint. But what I'm also doing while I do this is I'm not covering it 100%, and I'm also bringing out some of these areas a little bit farther than that initial footprint of the color that we did the first time. So what's going to happen is I'm in essence just adding another dimension to the layer of the leaves, so you can still see those dark areas, and this is adding a bit more punch to the color of the tree. And then once I've got that red on there, now I'm going to start adding some highlights to it. So I don't necessarily just want to have red and white on my brush or just go white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use red and add a little bit of white to it. So this is going to give me a mid-tone pink that I'll use as a highlight type of color, and then I'll use white as my last go around with the brightest of the bright color. So this ends up being a kind of a dark to medium pink type of color. I'm not washing my brush, and I'm just kind of adding little speckles of this mid-tone throughout my areas. And you can see, again, I'm not over painting. I'm just utilizing the areas that I had already set forth in the first couple of steps and kind of giving them that additional bit of information without overdoing it. I'm still leaving some of my red, I'm still leaving some of my dark spots, and this is going to give you that illusion of depth within that tree. And then once I've got that pink kind of area, now I'm not going to wash my brush, but I'm going to pick up a little bit of white paint, and this is going to be that extra added vibrancy that's going to add that final highlight on the trees. And you can, again, certainly add as much brightness as you want. You can get this to go super duper light. You can have this big, beautiful pink kind of tree if you wanted to, but if you want it to still look on the redder side, then I wouldn't go too far with those highlights. And if you did take it to a place where you're like, oh my God, it's just too pink, I don't want it to be pink, you can either wipe or wash your brush off on your paper towel, and then just pick up more red and just keep coming back with more red paint. So this can be as intensely red as you want it or as subtle as you want it. So just know that that vibrancy and that intensity is totally up to you. You can make this into whatever, you know, intense fire red that you want, or it can be subtle. So just go with whatever is visually appealing to you. Again, I'm still keeping some of my spots of my my branches poking through a little bit, and I'm giving these nice soft edges to make it look a little bit more realistic. And then we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this all nice and painted, you can put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing our ribbon. So I'm going to use my small brush, and the colors that I'm going to be using are red and white, and you can either use brown and or black for the shadowy areas. That's going to be your call on how intense you want that shadowy area to be. So the beautiful thing about a ribbon is you get to pick and choose where your highlights and your shadows are going to go. So everywhere you want that ribbon to look like it's popping out, you're going to put a highlight. Everywhere where you want it to look like it's dipping in, you put a shadow. So I'm going to tackle, I think, my shadows first. So I'm going to go with a little bit of red and brown. I think I'm going to put a little black. I'm going to go wild and crazy. I got red, brown, and black on my brush at the same time. If I want there to be a shadow in through here, I'm going to put a dark area, and just, I think I want a little more black. I like my shadows being bold, so I just put a little bit more black on my brush. So I'm going to have my shadow going in through here, and I just need it to fade out and meet in with that red. So wherever I have it, just get it to fade out into the neighboring red paint. And if you make your ribbon bigger, like I am doing as we speak, just roll with it, make it bigger. And then I'm going to go ahead and put all my shadowy areas in place. So I think I'm going red and black is going to be my shadow color. If I change it, I'll let you know. I think I'm going to have another shadow over on this side. So just a little red and black, put it in the area that I want to dip in or look like it's farthest away. And then I just pull that shadowy area till it blends in with the neighboring red paint. I think I'm going to still go a little shadow behind. This one I'm going to have in front. I'm going to have this other one in behind it. So I have red and a touch of black on my brush. And if you, I'm going to bump into this one that's in front of it a little bit, which I'm okay with because I know that I will correct that when I paint the highlight on it. So again, I'm just getting this to blend into the neighboring red. And let's see, where else do I want some shadowy areas? I think I want one in through here. So red and black are on my brush right now. And as I get into these smaller areas, I don't necessarily need as much black paint on my brush. Black can very easily take over, so just, you know, be cautious when it comes to using the black. The red will on your brush at the same time will help you to control that, but just in case, you know, you go a little bit, I like to tell you to be cautious coming out of the gate as opposed to aggressive when it comes to the blacks. I've got a dark spot in through here. I think I'll bring this all the way over my horizon line to help me cover my horizon line. I think I'm going to have a little one over in through here for the same purpose, hiding my horizon line, and then just getting that shadow to blend in with the neighboring red. So I just dipped my brush in a little bit more red paint just to get it to blend in. I think I want another shadow over in through this area over here. So I guess I'm being a little aggressive with the black on that one, which is totally fine. Just as long as I can get it to blend in. So I just picked up a little bit more red on my brush and getting it to blend in with that neighboring color. So once I've got my shadows in there, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I think I've got as many as I want. Wash and dry my brush. Now I'm going in for my highlights. So I'm going to start with some white paint. So if I want a highlight in through here, wherever I want that ribbon to look like it's popping out, that's where I'm going to put my white paint and get it to blend in with the neighboring red. So I wipe my brush off on my paper towel to get this highlight to blend in with the neighboring red. And you could do this in a progressive kind of process. It might go a little pink on you, which would happen when red turns into a lighter shade. It turns into a pink type of color. But if it turns too pink on you, or you're not getting the crisp white, you might end up wanting to do a couple of different layers to it. So you'll find your groove. I'm going to go with a highlight in through here. So just putting my white paint on and making sure that it blends in with the neighboring red. So whereas when I was doing the shadow, I was having both red and the shadow color on my brush at the same time, when I do the highlights, I predominantly start with white, just clean white or clean-ish white on my brush, as opposed to white and red. So that way I can get this crisp highlight, because if I had just, if I chose to do it with white and red coming out of the gate, then it might just turn out too pink on me. So every time I go to reload for the highlight, I wipe my brush off and I pick up just white paint. So I think I'm going to have a highlight in through here. So again, just white paint is going to get my highlight to start. I just ran through red paint or wet paint so you can see what happened there. Now I'm going to have to progressively get this lighter, which is totally fine. That is going to work out just well for me. I'm going to bring this around here, and I think I want another highlight in through here. So wiping my brush off on my paper towel, picking up some white paint, going to put some white in through here and just get it to fade out into the red. I think I'm going to do a nice bright one in through here, so you can definitely see that happening around her hand. And then I'm going to just kind of keep picking up red or layering my red into the entire ribbon until I've got all of those highlights and shadows talking, you know, progressively making their way into one another. So again, you might find that you've got to kind of sit here and tweak a little bit. Maybe your highlights weren't bright enough for you, so get it all on here. If you need to go back and add or subtract from the intensity of your highlights and shadows, feel free to do so. But this is one of those steps. It's really fun once you've got it all on here to step back and look at it from a distance and see how an awesome dimensional element you have just created onto your painting. And then we have one tiny little step left to go, and it's going to be with our small brush. So once you've got your ribbon nice and popping and flowing through the air, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I normally sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom left on this one. I'm gonna go black paint, and I'm going in this rock right here. So I sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful painting with a lot of movement and fun energy to it. And I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.